So hi, we're back for lecture 2 of chapter 6, and we're going to talk about the four main components that go into GDP, the four sectors, and the first one's going to be the largest, and that is personal consumption expenditure, and we use C for that. And so throughout the rest of the term, when you ever see a C by itself, that always stands for consumption. The technical term that comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis is known as personal consumption expenditure, and this is the spending by consumers on final goods and services purchased by U.S. residents. And this comes in three forms: durable goods, which are goods that are meant to last 3 years or more. So hopefully your appliances, washing machine, dishwasher, refrigerator, air conditioner all last 3 years or more, and they would be counted as durable goods. Non-durable goods would be goods meant to last less than 3 years, so food, medicine, clothing, all that would be non-durables. And then services would be paying people to do things for us, to get a haircut, which I haven't done for a long time, go to the dentist, go to the doctor, get your car serviced, go to a play, watch a play at a theater. If we're allowed to go back to sporting events, maybe you can watch a professional baseball game in person. All of those would be services. And for 2019, I got these numbers from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. For 2019, these are the three categories and the dollar amounts. So in 2019, we spent a little over 1.5 trillion, which is 1,500 billion on durable goods. We spent almost $3 trillion on non-durable goods, and we spent a little over $10 trillion, $10,000 billion on services. So you can see that most of our money goes towards services. And down here we have a graph that I got from the Federal Reserve site at St. Louis. And again, this is the data source known as FRED, Federal Reserve Economic Data. And they do these graphs for me. I just go in and find the category and give them the time frame. This is from 1980 to present, and they just plot it out for me. Fantastic. And again, the shaded areas show recessions, and you can see that our spending on consumption has been pretty continuous with little blips right there in the recessions. And this was the recession from the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And that was a large dip, but then this is the one we just experienced with the COVID shutdown. You can see we went down pretty darn fast, and that is a dramatic decrease in consumption. And that represents a lot of spending decrease in a lot of key areas. We've had a rebound there, a sharp rebound when we had some reopening there, but again, we're in shutdown mode again or maybe a partial shutdown mode, and so we shall see what happens later on this year. I have some other graphs that I took from the Fed site called FRED. And this looks at durable spending. You can see again. You might want to note that spending on durables is more volatile than just spending on other areas of consumption, because we don't have to buy that new appliance right now. We don't have to buy that new refrigerator. We can get by, repair things, and therefore we can cut back on our durables quite a bit if we need to. So it tends to be more volatile. There's more up and down movement here. Again, big dip there in the recession. Most of that was due just to a decrease in consumption of new cars and so forth. And that right there, again, was a big dip there. A strong rebound right there on durables. And so we did not go out buying durables when the initial shutdown came, but then we reopened again. We went out there and we started to buy those durables again. What we have down here are non-durables. You can see it's not as jagged moving, a little smoother, because we do have to buy our medicine, we do have to buy our food. We can come back in some things. But again, in recessions, you can see there's a dip there, and again, a strong drop right there. And here we have services. Massive decrease in services with the COVID shutdown. And of course, that would be your restaurants, that would be your salons, that would be your barber shops, all cutting back there. Plays, Broadway in New York City is dark right now, and so again, all those services people are not being paid for. It's pretty sad. And these are motor vehicle and parts. So these would be for new goods and parts for them. You can see again, large decrease there, and again, not as bad actually than we had in the financial crisis here. One sector that was not hurt at all: gambling. So somehow people still being gambled. They found ways to lose their money right here. I mean, they took a dip in the financial crisis, again, 2008, 2009, I remember seeing pictures of Las Vegas being pretty empty people during that time. But again, even though it's been shut down here so far, this data might be a little old. I don't know. But again, it looks like there's no hit right there. Unlike recreational services. That speaks for itself. So that would be going to amusement parks, Disneyland. That would be traveling, airline flights. As you all know, that pretty much has decreased dramatically, and the data really supports that. I mean, that's shocking. That is really shocking, and all the jobs with it. Wow. Here we have gasoline and energy. So that was a great recession there. And one thing about recessions is that people don't drive to work if they don't have a job. And so recessions are actually good for driving if you do have a job. You get your commute time should go down. You can see a large decrease there, rebounded, but again, it looked like even though the economy's doing well here, we were cutting back. Maybe that could be due to buying more fuel-efficient cars. I don't know. I see a lot of people driving SUVs, so I'm not quite sure. But here, the big decrease there. And that's me also. I mean, I'm lucky enough to work at home. That's why I'm doing these lectures right now. I've been to Chafee since the shutdown. Oh, I don't know, maybe I can't count them on one hand. And so I don't drive anymore, pretty much. I mean, I may visit my some relatives, but I don't drive hardly anyway right now, and that's reflected right here in the decrease in sales of gasoline. But a good thing is that if you're in the brewing business, seems things are okay. So, and bad times, I mean, look like it cut back, look kind of flattened out there in the Great Recession. But again, right here, I see no decrease in sales due to the COVID shutdown. So we're still buying our booze, and so that's good. The next sector is for business spending, and this is known as gross private domestic investment, and that's I. So capital I by itself always stands for investment, and that's gross investment. And so what does this mean? Well, first of all, it's spending on capital equipment. Remember, that's not buying shares of stock or buying real estate. That means buying real things, real tangible things that are used in business to produce other things. And it's gross, so it's total. All the amount of investment that goes into GDP is in this number right here, the total amount. And that includes all money being spent on not just new capital, but also replacement capital. And replacement capital is known as depreciation, and that represents the wear and tear of capital equipment. Capital equipment become obsolete and it has to be replaced. So it's both replacement and new additions. It's gross, total. And it's private, which means it's done by the private sector, not by government. And it's domestic, so it has to be done in this country. And the categories are two major ones. One is fixed investment spending. Fixed investment. This is spending on non-residential structures, so that would be business offices, retail outlets, warehouses, equipment, cash registers, tools, things like that, trucks. Residential structures, and that would be homes for households. I'm not quite sure where they put that here in investment, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, but as long as it goes somewhere, that's all that matters. I would put this under consumption, but that's fine. Put it here. And then includes intellectual property, and that would be all the money spent on software, things like that. And then we have the one thing I talked about earlier about what do we do with intermediate goods that at the end of the year have not been sold to the final user. And that is pictured right here under what's known as change in private inventories. This is the change in the physical stock of goods held by businesses at various stages of production, processing, or selling at the end of the year. So at the end of the year comes, GM may have a car half built, Macy's may have bought a sweater from a supplier but has not sold that sweater yet. So there's lots of things in various stages of production. Raw materials, unfinished manufactured goods, finished goods that have not been sold to the final user. So we have to pick that up because remember we have to measure GDP production not only things we buy. Most of the things we produce, we buy, which is good, but at the end of the year, we do have things in various stages of production or for reselling. And note this can be positive, negative, or zero. So here's an example. Let's say at the start of the year, a business has $40,000 of inventory in hand, and that'll be things, raw material, finished goods, and so forth, or maybe goods ready to ship. And at the end of the year, inventories is $50,000. And so they added $10,000 of inventories to their business, and so that represents money they spent on items that are partial stage of production but not sold yet. So that increase there has not been picked up by other areas of GDP because it hasn't been sold yet, but it does represent new production, and so it has to go into GDP right here. And so for this year, we would add in $10,000 of a positive number for represents a change in inventories for this business. Then if you go to the next year, or maybe the following year, they may start at $66,000 of inventories, and at the end of the year, they have $60,000. And so what happened is that they sold $6,000 worth of inventories that came from a prior year, and so they were already out in the prior year. And so we picked those up somewhere along the way in final user purchase, which we shouldn't have, and so we're going to take it out right here. Because again, this represents goods sold this year that were produced in the prior year. And so this would represent a negative $6,000 under this category for this year's GDP, where here would be a positive $10,000 for that year's GDP. Let me stop there. We'll break this lecture into two parts. I've gone over 10 minutes, now over 11 minutes, and so we'll stop there. We'll call this part one, and we'll come back to part two.